Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome once again to the People-to-People Market Update live on Facebook and YouTube. It is quite a cold day here in Sydney, but it is May 29, which means that rugby league started last night in Brisbane and it's now going live again tonight in Sydney. So things are changing. But the real question for us here today is the employment market changing? So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to give you an overview of market conditions for jobs last week across Australia, and I do have some information for New Zealand as well. We'll do our regular numbers section where we'll update you on the latest stats that were released in the last week on jobs. And we'll also join Ben Wheeler for an update on the Brisbane market and specifically the senior accounting market in Queensland. Kim Padmore from our Perth office will give us some detail on the opportunity of the week. And Mary Savova, joining us all the way from Melbourne, will give us her top job hunting tip this week. So finally, at the end of the broadcast, I'll give you some upcoming dates for events that you can't miss or shouldn't miss. And remember that if you have any questions throughout the broadcast, please put them in the comments section on whatever platform you're on, whether you're on YouTube or Facebook. And we'll see if we can answer them live during the broadcast today. So let's get into it. Let's start with my market update. So where are we? Well, I suppose the best way for me to describe this is that it's steady as she goes. So certainly from a people-to-people perspective, the market activity really has been, we're sort of almost bubbling along the bottom, so to speak, of what I'm expecting to be a U-shaped market job recovery. So what I thought I'd do is share a few anecdotes today in terms of the market from the feedback that we're getting from some of our clients. Over the last few weeks, we ran a snap survey where we surveyed about 300 job seekers, and we also surveyed employers representing about 160,000 employees out there. So, we're sharing that information, those statistics out with the market right now. Keep an eye on our social media because we're not releasing it generally to the public and for a couple of weeks yet. So we're just sharing it with those who contributed. But I got a couple of stories though from that. One was as an FP&A manager from a tech sector company. They've got about 130 staff. And they surveyed their staff to say, well, what do you want to do in terms of working from home? And 5%, only 5%, want to go back into the office full time, which I thought was an astounding number. And similarly, only 5% of their staff wanted to remain full time working from home. So I think that's pretty clear. And look, it's 130 staff. It's not across the whole, and it is tech sector. But with 90% of that organisation wanting some sort of mix between working from home and or being in the office, I think that sort of indicates that's where the new norm is. And I don't think there's any surprise for those of us who have been working from home and from the office. Medical device clients, we've got several of those at the moment who have said to us they're not planning to return to the office for the foreseeable future, which I thought was interesting. And the reason for that is they've only got warehouse staff, apparently. And the reason for that is they want to protect the essential on-site workers from the possibility of any sort of infection. And finally, the last story is an IT managed service provider and really has demonstrating what I was talking about last week on Facebook during this broadcast, which was that element of candidate hesitancy where people are risk adverse. And that they had a real life story where they had 4 candidates withdraw from the recruitment process after 3 rounds of interviews, psych and background testing. If that doesn't demonstrate what candidate hesitancy is in this marketplace, where we have not only a demand side collapse in job opportunities, we've got a supply side uncertainty and hesitancy issue as well in this job market. So very interesting. Right, so let's move on then to my regular numbers section. So I know I'm a nerd and I do like graphs. These numbers this week are courtesy of Kendra Banks, and she's the Asia Pacific Managing Director, Australia New Zealand Managing Director at Seek. So thank you, Seek, for these numbers. They were released publicly just a few days ago. And so new job ads continued to rise during the fortnight ending the 24th of May. That they were up some 39.7%. from the new baseline low point in April. And I think Jaden's just put the graph up on the screen, and you can see there that in the middle of April, that is really the low point. And that's building again on 2 weeks prior to that. So the biggest contributors to the job ad growth were trades and services, hospitality and tourism, healthcare and medical, administration and office support, education and training. So I thought that was very, very interesting. So the way that Kendra is describing it is that there are certainly positive signs in the fortnight from larger hiring sectors such as consumer services and professional services as well. So in the past 2 weeks also, the biggest growth from a geographical point of view in job ad volume was seen in Tasmania, 58.8% up, and South Australia, which was 51.8%. So some interesting, and as you can see by the graph, we're nowhere near, keep it clear, we are nowhere near where we should be. And if you think about that, the top of that graph was January, which is normally one of our quietest periods. We are certainly still at the bottom of the market, but some nice signs there. So the next statistics I thought I'd give you this week is I'd like to talk a little bit about New Zealand. We have an office in New Zealand, our sister company, Frog Recruitment. And what I thought I'd share with you is the unemployment numbers throughout the regions in New Zealand. And what you've got there on the screen is a colour-coded map of New Zealand, where the darkest colours are the highest levels of unemployment. And New Zealand Stats, it released their unemployment numbers every 6 months or so. The reason I thought I'd show this is I was quite interested in the fact that Southland was the lowest level of unemployment in New Zealand. And for those Australians who don't know where that is, it's right down the bottom of the map there. And the shading is the lowest, so the lightest pink is less than 2% unemployment, whereas the darkest is greater than 8%. And some of the regions that have the highest levels of unemployment in New Zealand, Gisborne, Hawke's Bay, Bay of Plenty, and Auckland is up there as well, around that in the North Island. So I thought I'd share that for those who are joining us from New Zealand. Right, so that's it for numbers this week. So now let's move through to our spotlight on a market. And this week we're going to be talking to Ben Wheeler regarding the Brisbane marketplace.
Thanks, Mark. So starting off, giving you a bit of an update. Hello, everyone. Give you a bit of an update on Queensland, and I'm sure this will come as no surprise to you. And no doubt it was the same story across the rest of Australia, that during April, we saw a dramatic reduction in the number of vacancies we were working on when compared to April 2019 last year. Some sectors certainly performed better than others. For us in Queensland, it's mining and logistics and supply chain were some of the few sectors that continued to hire. Fast forwarding into May, I'm pleased to say we have started to see this increase. It's certainly not an increase on May 2019, but it is an increase on, as Mark just mentioned, which is hopefully the benchmark, the low point in April. And hopefully that's the bottom of the jobs market. So on a week-to-week basis, we're seeing an upward trend. In relation to the states and those job numbers, Mark, you actually forgot Queensland there.
Yeah, no, I knew you'd say that. Look, the only one thing I can say to you is that Parramatta is certainly a much better side than Brisbane Broncos. Isn't that right, Ben?
Well, at least we're back. But we're up 55%. We're up 55% in Queensland, and that makes us the second fastest.
So it was Tasmania was number one, wasn't it? It's 56, and then so Queensland.
Yeah, we're number two. Yeah, so number two spot. And let's hope that trend continues. And certainly just what we're seeing in the office in the last couple of weeks, we are seeing a week on week. I mean, it's a slow growth trend, but it's there. And we're taking a lot of encouragement from that, for sure.
And in regards to the, I know yourself personally, you're more involved in the senior accounting market, CFOs, financial controllers. For those who are online in that sort of market, how are you describing the market at the moment in Queensland?
So firstly, I'd say at CFO level, it certainly had a decline like most areas, but there are still a few opportunities out there which I'm quite encouraged by, some bigger jobs that have just come up this week. And bearing in mind the Brisbane market or Queensland is quite a small space, and obviously that top end is never going to have a massive flurry. The other trend I'd say really has been a delay sort of driving the roles. So positions are put on hold. So organisations that maybe were going to hire, maybe had somebody resign, have been able to say to whoever it was, do you mind just hanging on for another month or two? So they've even brought people back out of retirement that maybe that were going to be leaving. So that's put roles on hold. So I'm hoping as we get through some form of normality, those roles will actually come through. And then looking below that, so looking at, say, your financial controllers, finance managers, unfortunately, there were a few redundancies on that space, and probably more generally in the accounting area, meant that a lot of candidates came into the market who were immediately available. So if you're looking and you've got notice to give, I'd say that does make it challenging if we've got like-for-like candidates and somebody can say, hey, I can start Monday. That's quite an advantage for sure. So that's sort of happening. But overall, that accounting sector is, as I said, going with the trend, sort of moving up and up week on week, which is encouraging.
Yeah, I mean, I was chatting to James in our Sydney office, and he was surprised that there were still some senior opportunities in the marketplace, whether they're listed with People2People or elsewhere, where a couple of people have actually secured new roles. So it's interesting that it's not completely dead, but it's certainly not a good market right now. Now, I've noticed we've got a question from Joanna here, and she's asking specifically about the Queensland market. So she says she's based in Brisbane and would like to know about the trend in admin business support in Queensland.
So admin and business support definitely was an area that was hit almost the hardest during the start of this COVID crisis, to coin a phrase. So that definitely dropped off a lot. It has started to come through, I'd say, in the last week or two. It is still an area, I'd say, that's struggling. I think the big part of that is, and this sort of is the other thing I was going to mention about, we're starting in Queensland to transition workforces back into the office. So this week we had schools go back, and it wasn't a mass move, I'd say, of people into the office. It's been more of a staged approach, but that certainly has an impact, I would say, on business support roles. There is a sort of hesitancy to bring those roles through and start people remotely. So I'm hoping over the coming weeks, as we start to see the workforces transition, those roles start moving forward. We actually ran a quick survey on LinkedIn this week to see when people are planning to return. And I've got the stats here that 10% already back in the office. We've got 29% expect to be back in June, 41% in July, and then interestingly, 20%, which sort of links to the trend you mentioned, Mark, are going to be at home for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, wow. So one thing we've noticed also in the Sydney marketplace is that, and I think from an administration and business support perspective for Joanna, is that once the people are starting to return back to the office, that we started to notice that the first short-term temporary vacancy arose where people were requiring assistance in for just a short period of time. So if you need a temp for a week or a few days, as distinct from a specific project for 3 to 6 months, and we used to get quite a lot of that type of work come through. And for the first time in several weeks that happened the week before last, which I thought was interesting. Rightio. Well, thanks, Ben. Thank you very much. If you do have any further questions for Ben, then please pop them in the comments, and we'll see if we can get to him by the end of the broadcast. But now let's move to our opportunity of the week with Kim Padmore from our Perth office. G'day, Kim.
Hi. So we are currently recruiting for here a legal assistant for a national law firm that we do quite a lot of work with. So this particular role is providing support to 2 partners and their team in commercial litigation. The role involves diary management, processing monthly billing, preparing correspondence and documents, and much more to provide support to that group. This particular team, they are very self-sufficient. They're extremely well organised, and they really pride themselves on their work-life balance. So this role will work a 37.5-hour week with really minimal overtime. They're also based in brand new offices and have a really social and collaborative team environment. So if you have legal assistant experience, ideally within litigation, then you can definitely be considered for this role. So definitely get in contact. We also are trying to find a temp at the moment for a global medical devices organisation that we work with. Based north of the river here in Perth, really experienced You just need to be degree qualified and have a little bit of admin or customer service behind you. The role will entail putting together their medical kits and dealing with lots of different hospitals and doctors and managers throughout the business as well. So a bit of data entry and then putting all of those kits together for them as they've had a bit of a backlog with the elective surgeries being put on hold. So it's now starting to ramp back up again.
Well, that's good news. I did notice in the AFR last week that they were talking specifically about law firms. They actually had an article yesterday about it as well, where law firms used Perth as a test case about going back into the office. So it doesn't surprise me that you got both temporary and permanent opportunities in Perth. It sounds like you guys are doing quite well on the getting back into it sort of front. So
yeah, definitely. And I think perm in legal has picked up before temp actually. So yeah, seems to be a lot more activity.
So can you, I don't think we mentioned the salary. What was the salary on that one? On the
permanent? So for the legal assistant position, that is up to 75 package, so inclusive of super. There is also lots of additional benefits that the firm offers as well, including like health and wellbeing, facilities and lots of different resources. And then the other position I mentioned in the medical devices organisation is paying around $26 per hour plus super.
Okay, great, fantastic. Now, if people are really interested in these particular positions, how do they get in touch or apply for these roles, Kim?
Yeah, so they can send me through an email to kim@people2people.com.au or give me a call on 08 6160 6201.
Yeah, fantastic. Rightio. Thank you very much, Kim. So now let's move on to our job hunting tip all the way from Melbourne. And Mary from our Melbourne legal team has a couple of tips for us, Mary. Welcome. How's the weather down there?
It's actually nice and sunshiny today, so a bit of a change. It has been very cold the last few days, so pretty good.
Fantastic. Now, I've seen in the stream here that we do have a question about the market in Victoria, but we'll get. So I'll put a broadside you a little bit on that afterwards. But
no,
what's your job hunting tip right now?
Well, I think with the market being quite saturated with immediately available candidates, it's really important to find something where you will stand out from the crowd. And I think the differentiator here could be using video in your application process. So I definitely keep it professional. Don't be throwing TikTok videos out there to get people's attention. So I'd probably recommend creating a YouTube channel and using a URL into emails or your resume even, and hyperlinking that into the application process.
But they're private links too, aren't they, Mary? Like you don't
exactly
have to make like no one else can see them. Just private.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, you don't have to publish them. They can be unpublished videos, and only you will have access to the video on YouTube. But at least you can create that link and then send it off to people so they can view it in their own time. And yeah, like I said, keep it professional. Definitely no TikToks with crazy filters and songs on there. That's for sure.
Excellent. All right. Yeah. So that's it. I mean, look, just standing out these days when there are so many people in the marketplace, certainly a good advice there. Now I'm just going to see what.
And I think while we're getting to that question, I think it's really important to be persistent. You know, there's not a lot of businesses that are hiring, and there's jobs out there that you probably think that you're not going to fit straight into, but look into the job description, think, okay, actually I have done that before, or maybe I could learn this. Don't just pigeonhole yourself into the job that you are currently doing. Be a bit creative with the skill sets you've got and the job opportunities that are available.
Yeah, and persistence, like be the one who calls, who's in touch all the time, who's right there in the moment. It always makes a big difference. Julia says, what about the trend in Victoria and Melbourne? So she wasn't keen on Queensland. She wanted to know what's happening in the market in Vic. How would you describe that? I mean, let's start with your particular specialty in legal. Let's start with that. Maybe if you could broaden it out for everybody else who's on the broadcast?
Yeah,
as well?
definitely. So we have seen a bit of a pickup in legal with a couple of jobs coming through over the last fortnight. Specifically, we've seen an increase in healthcare and insurance law and family law, which, I mean, doesn't surprise me. You turn on the TV, there's a lot of ads on for family law. So I think with everyone cooped up at home, unfortunately, it has created some stress for families. So that's been a bit of an increase. A lot of the roles that we've had come through have been permanent, which I think is really good, and businesses are starting to look at long-term opportunities, and I think anyone hiring at the moment will be above the curve there with hiring the best talent. So yeah, that's been a main thing that I've noticed in the Melbourne market. But generally speaking, we have seen some admin roles that have come through. So we've recruited some office manager type positions as well as team assistants, and then sales, and even the Forex market has been really busy. So yeah, anyone with Forex experience or customer service type experience would definitely be interested in hearing from them.
Excellent, great. All right, thank you very much, Mary. Now, I've just realised that, so looking at the stream here, that we didn't actually let Ben tell us how to get in touch with him, but I'm going to ask you first. If people are interested in connecting with you, what's the best channel? How do they go about doing that?
Yeah, definitely. So email will probably be easiest. So that's mary.savova@people2people.com.au. You can connect with me on LinkedIn as well at Mary Savova, or just give me a buzz on 0390.
Oh, I think that yeah, we missed you. We missed your phone number there, Mary. But we'll make sure we put it in the comments so that it's clear for everybody to get in touch with you. And I know that you're a machine on social media, so if you can't find Mary on social, I'd be very surprised. So thanks again. I'm just going to ask Jaden now to get Ben back on the call so he can share with us. Ben, I didn't. How does it?
Queensland again, forgotten. I don't know.
How do people get in touch with you?
Just if you want to drop me a line, probably the easiest way. So 0731180125, or my email ben@people2people.com.au. I did notice there was a question about particular sectors that are returning, and I think I'd just go back to the saying that where we saw the least decline, the mining, logistics, supply chain. And when you say mining, we do incorporate mining services. So that area is still the one that I think is going to grow the most, drop the least. And I think that's a trend that will come through. As I said, as we transition back, let's hope the others sort of follow suit, but yet to be seen.
Fantastic. All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today on Facebook and on YouTube. We will be back again next week, but I do have a couple of dates I'd like to share with everybody. So of course we've got Facebook Live next week. June 3rd, there's a talent webinar for specifically a Victorian jobs update. There's some career tips, and we also have a mental health focus on that webinar. That webinar is June 3rd. So keep an eye. We'll pop a link into the comments below so everybody can join that. So look out for that. And also in our leadership series from webinars on June 11, we have a new topic: bold and brave questions to I can't read this properly. That's terrible. Bold and brave questions to co-create resilient digital businesses. So keep an eye on that. I'll pop a link also in the comments for today. Thank you again, everybody, for joining us. Thanks again, Ben from Queensland. Thank you also, Mary from Victoria, and Perth and Kim from Perth. There we go, Kim, you made it. The other guys didn't even make it onto the screen. That's it, everybody. Thanks again for joining us. Spot on 25 minutes again. Look forward to seeing you again at 12:30 on Friday afternoon with the People to People Market Update. See you then.